Hey all, welcome to day 21 with Odyssey. He is going to meet the blue tarp, which everyone knows eats wild mustangs when they're first introduced to it. And he wasn't too phased in the beginning. I had it folded up. I wanted to make it as non-threatening as possible, and so I just had him sniff it, had him follow it around, the same kind of things that I do with any other object I'm desensitizing with. So again, I'm using some food rewards, I'm using some counter conditioning here to teach him that the object isn't scary, help engage his curiosity, and make it a relaxing and enjoyable experience for him. And he's getting a lot better at taking treats out of my hand. He realizes that he doesn't have to be super grabby about it, so he can just calmly take the treat right off my hand, and he's getting much better at having his mouth be handled. So next I have to let him know that the tarp makes noise. I don't want him to get surprised by the noise when it starts to touch him and go over his back. So I just start flapping it around the same way I do with the saddle, just letting him see it move and hear the sound that it makes. When I start to touch him with the tarp, I act super casual and act just as if I were grooming him with the same brush that I brush him with every day. In the beginning, I treat it just as if it were a bulkier, noisier saddle pad, and because the way I'm putting it on and off him is so familiar to him from all the desensitizing I've done with the saddle pad, he's okay with it and he's pretty accepting of it. As I swing the tarp up and down, I start to let it unfurl itself a little bit. It becomes scarier and scarier. I start to leave it on him a little longer and let it make some noise up there, and he starts to get more comfortable with that. As the tarp grows larger and scarier, this is acting as a form of systematic desensitization. This is basically introducing the horse to something in the smallest, least scary dose at first, and then gradually having it become scarier and scarier for the horse, but because they've been prepared by all the previous exposures to the scary object, they're gradually becoming more and more comfortable with it, and they're ready for the next step. What I don't want to do is just come in there with a fully unfolded tarp and try to put it on him right from the get-go. This would obviously be terrifying for him, and I would inevitably lose some trust. Because he's a little unsure as it starts to get bigger, he's backing up here and there, so I want to work on some forward motion, get him thinking forward, and help him to become more comfortable. I want to make sure he's not developing sticky feet where he starts to stand there and internalize it even though he's not actually comfortable. I want to make sure he really is getting over that fear and becoming truly comfortable with the tarp. And this was a lot nicer. He didn't take a step back, but he still looked tuned in and focusing, and he definitely was present and concentrating on what was happening, so he got a good reward for that. So I did some more repetition, of course, making sure to give him some breaks to process, and here I manually unfolded it a bit more to make it even bigger. Of course, it had been gradually unfolding along the way, and he was really good for that. And so if you're wondering what's the point of all this, the tarp is really useful to get them to noisy, flappy, unpredictable things on their back, because one day a rider is going to be a noisy, unpredictable thing on their back. And so if you can get them used to the feeling and the sounds of things above them and on them and all over them, touching their neck and their butt and everything, then they're going to be a lot more comfortable carrying a rider in the future. Tarps are also useful to get the horse ready to be wearing a blanket or anything like that. It also functions as another trust-building exercise. I don't always love to use the word desensitizing when doing stuff like this because it can sometimes come with a negative connotation for some people. I don't desensitize in the sense that I teach them to just tune out all things that are happening around them and kind of retreat into a shell. I don't want my horses doing that. What I am doing, however, is teaching them how to handle when things may be worrying them and how to react in a safe way. I don't want them to think that they can jump on top of their handler, spin and bolt away, kick something or someone that may be scaring them, or things like that. Instead, I reward their natural curiosity, try to teach them to be curious and think about maybe interacting with something that might be scaring them. They don't have to say yes right away. They don't have to automatically see something that worries them and fight off all their instincts and say, yes, I will march right up to that thing right now and conquer it. But if they can at least give me a maybe, if they can give me a little try, that's what I'm always trying to reward, is their try and their curiosity, and not just saying no and doing something dangerous like bolting away. My goal is to build their confidence in themselves and realize that they can tackle and they can handle something that may scare them, and at the same time build their trust in me as sort of a guide for them. And so they start to realize that I would never put them in a situation or try to put something on their back that would hurt them. So the same way I did with the saddle pad and the saddle and everything else, I'm just introducing moving with it in small doses and then building up to having the tarp fully unfolded and having him move around with that. And I want to teach him that every time something goes on his back, he's not just going to move off and have to trot and canter right away. And so I take it off, put it on, take it off, and just do a lot of that. And I really emphasize a lot of that, like putting things on and taking them off, because I've found that it really helps them become comfortable with whatever you're putting on them, and it also helps them to stand quiet and relaxed for being saddled. And every so often, I don't do it too often because I don't want them to think that's the objective here, but I will let the object fall off him. I think it's really important that horses know how to react when things fall off them and that they don't initially spook and bolt or kick, because this could be very dangerous for when a rider falls off them. Now we're really getting to the fun stuff. The tarp is starting to unfurl quite a bit. This is what I love about tarp desensitizing. It just gets them used to so much feeling all over them. It helps for when a rider wants to reach around behind and pat their butt or wiggle all over them, lay on their neck, anything like that. It just helps them get so comfortable with things all over their back. You can also have some fun twirling and waving the tarp all around and get them used to seeing things move that are super unnatural for them to see. This is nothing like anything he would see in the wild. And at this point, he's kind of just like, okay, whatever, stupid human antics. But this kind of stuff is nice for when you're at a show and a tent blows over or a plastic bag blows by the ring or something that might spook your horse and ruin your round comes up. And it just helps them react to seeing weird stuff happen around them. So here I'm getting to the point where I'm about wrapping it up. He's done really super well with all of this and honestly taken it all in stride. And so naturally that's when things start to go wrong. He gets nervous when he steps on the tarp and feels it under that back leg, and he spooks out from under it. So I just want to reassure him that that's nothing to be super worried about. Of course, that's a very normal thing to spook at. I wouldn't blame him for getting scared at all, but I'm just going to help him conquer that fear. So kind of the mistake I made was putting it in the same position where you can see the tarp is longer on the outside, it's touching the ground on the outside. So my thought process was let him do that again and realize it's not going to harm him if it touches his back legs, but what ends up happening is he spooks again, and that kind of reinforces that fear, because when he spooks he does pull the tarp off, and he gets the release when the tarp's off him, and he's like, okay, phew, got out of that situation. So what I do this time is I make the tarp longer on the inside so I can break it down into another smaller step. He can see the tarp dragging on the ground, and it might even touch that inside left hind, and then we can work our way up to it touching the outside right hind. But right here I'm just breaking it down into a smaller step for him so that he can conquer that fear and have it be a good experience, rather than this session just evolving into him spooking over and over again. And so of course I'm going to reward the slightest bit of try. He did a little circle and he held it together, and he was very good about that, so I gave him a reward. And so this time I pull the tarp so it's longer on the inside, but I'm on actually the right side of him. And so I'm going to have him do a circle on that side and get used to it dragging on that side, and then we can work our way up to where we were before. So now I have it where it's about equally in the middle, and that's going to be the next step towards getting him okay with it touching his hind legs. And honestly, that wasn't a super bad reaction, and so I went to do that again. The reason that I want him comfortable with things touching his back legs in motion, even though he's not much of a reactive kicker at all, I want him to be comfortable with things, so in case he gets loose and like the lead rope's dragging along touching his back legs, or he gets the lunge, like tangled in the lunge line, or a rider gets dragged and is touching his back legs, I don't want that to freak him out and cause him to bolt. This was really nice because it touched both back legs and he was super brave about it. And then here the wind blows the tarp into his front legs, which he was also very good for. He did get nervous, but he didn't lose his cool. It's just a really good example that you can't prepare them for any possible situation that might come up, but you can teach them the tools to handle when they get worried or afraid, or when something out of the ordinary happens to them. And so now we finally achieved what I set out to do, which is where the tarp is touching his back legs as he's moving. It's on that outside leg, and he's handling it really super well. And so this won't be the last time he meets the blue tarp. I think it's a good thing to come back to from time to time, but I just decided to finish off with a little bit of dragging it and just some easier stuff. I threw the tarp over him one more time just to reinforce what we did, and honestly to see how he would do with it like fully unrolled on him. And he was really great. It was touching both sides on his back legs, and he was awesome for that. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm really excited to share the rest of Odyssey's series and getting him started under saddle. The next will be the Western saddle. And so stay tuned for that, and make sure to leave a comment if you like the video.